Today I decided I was gonna make some spaghetti sauce. So I've decided to come out here, even though it's a little rainy and wet, and gather some of this here oregano. I also think I'm going to gather some of these chives because I never use them enough for the year, and I could use them instead of onion in my pasta sauce. Wow, these really smell great. I mean, I knew they would, but they're so oniony. The next thing I'm gonna do is snip a few basil leaves from my windowsill basil plant so that we can add some fresh basil to the mix. Trimming it in this way also helps the plant grow bushier, so it's a good thing. Good for my taste buds too. So we can add some fresh basil to our sauce. I think that's good. Maybe one more. And we have just a nice little pile of basil that we're gonna snip up. We're gonna wash all these up in the colander and get them ready to go in our sauce. So for my spaghetti today, we are going to be using a spaghetti squash. I mentioned, maybe I didn't mention, but I'm trying to do a 2-week vegetarian / vegan diet just to reboot after being on vacation. You know how, at least I know how I tend to overindulge on vacation. So what I did was I preheated. The oven is preheating to 375. I have my silicone baking mat here that I'm just going to put a little bit, just a little bit of oil on. You can use whatever kind of oil you want. I'm using olive just because that's what I have. And now I'm going to cut my spaghetti squash in half lengthwise. I'm going to pierce it a few times with a fork and place it cut side down and bake it for about 20 minutes. I'll check it until it's fork tender. So here I have sort of wrestled my spaghetti squash in half. It is hard. It's kind of like a pumpkin, so be careful cutting it in half. And once it's done, these seeds will scoop out easily, so I'm not even going to worry about removing the seeds. Here is my spaghetti squash. I have poked it a few times with the knife. Sorry, spaghetti squash. To let the steam escape. And we're just going to pop it in the oven now. Like I said, I'm going to check it after 15 or 20 minutes because this is a relatively small spaghetti squash and I don't want it to be mushy. So while my spaghetti squash is baking, I am going to try my hand at making a pasta sauce. And I am just going to use about half a package of sliced portabella mushrooms, the red and yellow and orange pepper chopped up mix that we did in our food prep, and the fresh chives and oregano and basil, some of which I collected from my yard. I have some tomato basil marinara sauce, some sea salt, and some garlic here. So I gotta pull these leaves off of these stems, which is gonna take me a minute. So I'm gonna do that and then I'll be back. Just gonna dice these up so I can saute them in a little bit of oil and salt just to start to bring out their flavors. And of course, we're going to add some fresh garlic. I'm just going to chop that up. And we're going to saute our chives with this because ordinarily I would be sauteing my onions with this, right? So oops, fly everywhere. Whoa. They're like flying everywhere. How cute. I won't think it's cute when I have to clean these mugs up, right? I'm interested to know other ways to use spaghetti squash. If you have used spaghetti squash, what are your thoughts? I'd love to know about it, so give me some comments in the comment section. That would be great to communicate. And then as you can see, our peppers are already chopped up. So we're going to get these all in the pan. Just going to add a generous amount of sea salt and some pepper. And some more peppers. And we're going to saute these until our taste just starts to come up, you know, till our mushrooms are a little bit caramelized and our peppers and onions. So I kind of want a little bit of a high heat because I kind of want a high heat, but I don't want my garlic to burn. So we'll just keep it moving here and saute these here ingredients. So here are our herbs that I have taken off of the stem. I am going to chop them up as well, and it may seem like this is a lot, but when you're using fresh herbs, just like when you're making an herbal tincture, you need a lot more fresh plant material than you do if it's dried. And the taste is a lot more intense if it's dried. So you tend to need about 4 or 5 times as much fresh herb as you do dried herb. So I'm going to chop these up. It looks like a lot, but I'm sure it's going to end up coming out right. At least I hope so. I think so. We're going to stay positive. We are going to keep this 100% positive, right? So now what we're going to do is to a different pot. I just have this one here because it has a nice top to it. I'm going to add about, I don't know if it'll be the whole jar. It's hard for me to make small amounts of food, even though I'm usually only cooking for 1 or 2 or 3 people. So trying to not waste here. We're going to add about, I am making a mess. Well, I guess we're going to do the whole jar because Lottie has already put the whole jar in the pan. Okay, and to that, we are going to add our mushroom, chive, garlic, and peppers. And I'm going to wait until toward the end of the cooking to add the fresh herbs so that we get the most of their awesome flavor. But because we want our sauce to be infused with all of this mushroom loveliness, we're just going to let this simmer. I'm actually going to add just a little bit of water. I get that from my grandma. Okay, we're going to let that simmer for about 15 or 20 minutes and be right back. So here's our spaghetti squash out of the oven. I actually cooked it a bit longer. Part of that was by mistake because I Didn't set my timer. So I think it was in there for about 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes instead of 20 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever I said. So hopefully it's not overcooked. We're going to let it cool until I can handle it, because right now I can't handle it. And then we'll scoop out the seeds, and you use like a fork or something to separate the strands into spaghetti-like strings. All right, we shall be back once these have cooled a bit. So here we are with our spaghetti squash that has cooled to where I can handle it now. And I am going to first take this spoon and lightly scrape around to get the seed layer out. You can see how these are like already like strands that come apart. Now what I'm gonna do is release the spaghetti-ness. And that's a seed here. It smells really good. Like I said, I hope it's not overdone, but we're gonna, it doesn't matter if it is, because we're gonna eat it anyway. So you just scrape along the sides, and the squash separates. Into spaghetti-like strands. You can use this to make like a cold pasta salad. Anything you use spaghetti noodles for, or any kind of pasta really. I mean, I would be willing to try it. It's a little more crunchy than quote unquote spaghetti noodles, but not in a bad way. At least I don't think so. I've heard you can also do spaghetti squash in the microwave quickly. I don't use a microwave, so I haven't tried that method yet. But don't be deterred, you know, by doing something different. So there we go. That's our bowl of spaghetti squash pasta. And what I like to do at this point, to kind of make it even more spaghetti-ish, is I will drizzle it with a little olive oil, add just a little bit of salt because our sauce has its own thing going on, and even just a touch of garlic powder for this particular dish. Sorry, I bumped the camera. So here we have our sauce that has been simmering away. It's been way longer than 15 minutes, but I just had it on very low. And I'm actually going to add the fresh herbs to it. I remember my mother just putting the fresh herbs in. She had like basil growing in the backyard, and she just put like the whole entire fresh hookup in there. So you know what? This is for my mom. Got fresh basil, fresh thyme. I actually found some thyme out in the yard as well, and some fresh oregano. So I am just going to stir this in. It smells really good. I'm going to fold these in and let it simmer just a little while longer until it is wilted. And I want to put the top on so that I don't lose all of those fragrant herbaceous oils. And I hope I'm not overdoing it on the overhead shots, but you know what? I'm happy that I can do overhead shots now, because for a long time I couldn't. So what we're going to do is plate this up. We're going to take some of our spaghetti squash noodles. And we're going to take our sauce, which smells amazing. And the last thing I'm going to add is a little vegan parm. What is vegan parmesan, you might ask? Well, that's another video. But look at this. I'm going to be fancy. And there we go, folks. Vegan spaghetti.